everybody, and welcome to Chatty Bumpkin. For anyone I'm yet to meet, my name is Hannah, and I am the Business Development Manager here at Chatty Bumpkin, or also known as Children Inspired by Yoga. Super excited today because I've got the fabulous Helen with us, who is one of our franchisees. Hello, Helen.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon.
Well, they don't know. Could be morning, could be afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Hello, hello. So I'm really excited to have Helen on today because she is essentially, I feel like an expert in all things kids. And so she's mostly going to talk today and I'm going to listen along with you guys. So Helen, could you sort of tell me your background so everybody else kind of knows as well?
Yeah, of course. I feel like that's a bit of a billing there. You've kind of bigged me up to know lots.
It's well earned. It's all good. It's well earned.
So I was working in schools for about 18 years. So 18 years I was a teacher at secondary school and part of the leadership team. And around Christmas time, I kind of made the jump and do some different bits now. And one of those things is Children Inspired by Yoga. I still do work in schools. So I still do talk to head teachers and leaders of department. And so it's a really good balance to be able to still kind of be aware of what's going on within that field, but also try to do something a bit different. So with Children Inspired by Yoga, I run the kind of area of Essex South. So we work all through kind of Wickford, Hockley, Rayleigh. So if you're kind of in that area, that's kind of what I'm doing.
Amazing. What made you move from schools to a wellness entrepreneur? Do you think that's a fair title?
I'm going to go with it, Hannah. I'll go with that.
That's a good one.
I think increasingly I was finding that I wasn't living true to my values and really starting to think, what is it that I want to do? A lot of people that go into teaching because they really want to better people's lives. Like, there are very few other reasons, I think, that most people are going in because they want to actually make a difference. And I was increasingly finding I wasn't necessarily feeling that was happening, and started to really question, is this where I'm going? Am I doing the right thing by people? Yes, I started to look around and look at people in front of me and more see that the adults teaching the children are living in an area or living in a time when there is so much pressure, massive amount of workload on teaching staff at the moment, so much stress around, and they are having to deal with children who are far more vulnerable than ever before, experiencing far more cases of mental health issues than ever before, and really at that point where they don't necessarily have the skills and the tools that they need to ultimately to be really successful within our current education system. The reality is that right from when children are 7 years old, so my son is in year 2 and he's just done his SATs papers, there were already children who are feeling stressed and worried. And he told me of some of his friends who were feeling a bit nervous. And I think, you're 7 years old, there seems to be kind of something wrong within that system. And it's a case that those children are being put under that pressure. There's no fault or blame being put here on schools or parents or the kids themselves. They are simply a product of how our society is working right now. And so I really started to sit there and think, those children that I was seeing through at secondary school, who are often actually placing a lot of pressure on themselves, like, I have to do really well at this test, because if I don't do well at this test, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Because actually, as adults, most of us know it's not the end of the world, is it?
It's an isolated incident in time, isn't it? And ultimately, nothing is permanent. You can change it, you can retake it. Not every child is academic, or they don't learn in that way, and they don't do well. I don't do well in exam situations generally. I mean, I don't do too badly, but sometimes I get that fog of, I just can't think. I kind of get the same thing when I do a crossword or I play Scrabble. And it's like an old school, like, child limiting belief, isn't it? And like, my stepdaughter at the moment, she's doing her GCSEs, and she has that. If she's doing maths, even though she's had a tutor, and she had a couple of tutors, and they just say she's so clever, she's really clever. But as soon as she's in the exam, it's like an old belief that she's not good, and she can't do it, and she can't remember. Not even can't remember, but just, I can't even explain it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like that.
Yeah.
That kind of that wall comes up. You just can't function in or perform in that environment.
Absolutely. I mean, I've worked with A-level students. I finished my last class a few weeks back, and at that part I teach A-level biology, and those students are really academic. They're actually the children who do really well in exams, and they find that kind of work traditionally quite accessible. And yet they're really underconfident and underselling themselves. And when I've gone into other schools and talking to other sixth former students, right from sort of their 17, 18-year-olds, and if you stayed on an A-level course, you are really academic. That, you know, you're looking at quite a small subset of people, and yet they are still struggling with that confidence level and being able to check in with their emotions and really recognize how they're feeling. And if that group of people are feeling that way, then it's a fair assumption that all of the other groups are also feeling that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that most schools know this, you know, and it might be represented in all sorts of different data. So schools have to track various different data points. So things like their exclusion rates, things like instances where there may be aggression between two different students, their rates of self-harm, their rates of children saying that they're having suicidal thoughts. These are all things that schools are tracking and are aware of and are dealing with. And the harsh reality is that by the time those children are 14, 15, 16, so many of those self-limiting beliefs that you mentioned about your stepdaughter having with maths, they're so entrenched that to try and kind of unpick that then becomes a really, really difficult task. And many of the support staff within schools are trying their very best to do that. However, there's lots and lots and lots of children with these kind of like self-limiting beliefs or underconfidence or mental health issues and so on and so forth. And there are not the resources there. And I think your original question was sort of why I decided to make some of this change. And it was because I started to think, like, I need to do something differently about this. Actually, if I can encourage more people to really have time to check in on their emotions and to acknowledge that they're feeling sad or angry or nervous, and that's okay, that's a human emotion and that will pass. And there are other solutions. If I can really encourage young people to have breathing techniques and be aware that they are in control of their body, actually, they can self-regulate, they can lower that energy down, then actually that could have a massive change in our community. And so for me, really, that's where I'm really passionate about Children Inspired by Yoga. I'm really passionate about trying to make sure that from a young age, because it has to start at a really young age.
Yeah.
You know, if you ask, you know, the average 15-year-old, kind of repeat after me, which is how we do it in our family, as opposed to sort of saying affirmations or positivity.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Sort of just repeat after me. I am beautiful. I am strong. I am worthy. I really struggle with that. I mean, I speak to some of my friends, and as adults, they're like, "Oh no,
well, it's like, do you practice repeating after me? Do you practice that in your own life?"
Yes, yeah. I practice it in my own house and have done for a few years. So, you know, when I'd have a really difficult day, I was a deputy head, and I'd sit in the car in the rearview mirror and go, "I am an excellent deputy head. I am going to be successful today. This meeting will be successful. I have got the best interests at heart," whatever it was that was kind of causing me any kind of anxiety. But for many people, that's so far the next step beyond.
Well, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with affirmations in that I completely see how beneficial they are, and I practice them. I think that's it, isn't it? It's practice. I can't remember what author says it, but he's like, people are like, but it's lying, so it feels like it's not true. But he's like, no, it's telling the truth in advance, which I really loved. I was like, that's
so a nice one.
Yeah. But it's like you know, if you don't believe yourself to be beautiful, it's a nice easy one, isn't it? Like, I am beautiful. Your mind is like, no, you're not. Oh, that's not even true. And it's not even active words, but it's almost like, oh, it's like it's so like nails on a chalkboard against the grain. But as an adult, I can kind of go, I am beautiful, I am this, or, you know, I am courageous. And the other thing I've actually learned to do is, if I am really struggling with one, is to tag a because on the end of it. So I am patient because, and then I use an example, which makes my brain go, oh yeah, I was patient in that whatever it is. And that really works. But can you imagine then if you're 15 and you've got so many other things, like, you know, if we try and have a conversation with our 16-year-old, if it's not something she wants to talk about, again, it's not intentional. And I was definitely the same, like my poor mum, just a wall straight away comes up, and my brain just couldn't couldn't sort of deal with it. So to then deal with that kind of that lying or telling the truth in advance, I can imagine that as a 15-year-old, if you've never done that and you've created this really clear neural pathway from a really young age that, no, I can't do exams, I can't do exams, I can't do exams, I'm not good at maths, I'm not good at maths, I'm not smart, whatever it is. You can imagine then when you're trying to say you are, but you've also got all those other hormones and all the other things that are going on, it must be even harder than it is, because they're not easy as adults, are they, to reprogram those like limiting beliefs anyway.
Absolutely. And I think the concern is that those limiting beliefs that children have been reinforced. You know, they're actually probably relatively accurate. You know, like, oh, I'm rubbish at maths. Well, probably from 7 or 8 years old, you've been in the maths intervention group. So the message was already clear to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, then when you did your Key Stage 2 SATs, you're in the support group, or you're in the lower half. And then when you were set in maths, when you went to secondary school, you were in the bottom sets. And so very often those kind of self-limiting beliefs that people are accumulating are quite justified, because they've been externally reinforced.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And I think that when we're looking at how to tackle some of that and the associated issues that come off the back of it, it has to start really young. It has to be, you know, the one I do with my boys walking into school is, I try my best and my best is good enough. Because they need to hear that regularly,
that. Yeah.
you know?
I love that one. I try my best and my best is good enough. What you say, sorry, we are those people.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, we are those really like geeky people walk in. What are our affirmations today, boys?
I love that though. I mean,
I am worthy. Yes, you're worthy.
And I feel like what's really lovely is there is more of a shift into the being more people like that. You're probably still the odd ones.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's this really funny YouTube video of like one person dancing in a field. I'll see if I can find it and I'll send it to you. It's like one person dancing in a field for ages at like a festival, and it's a total nutter dancing like a lunatic. And then actually a couple more people join, and eventually the whole field is dancing. And it's a real video. It's not created. It's just like, for ages, people are like, look at this nutter, like totally just absolutely just loving their life. And eventually the entire field is dancing. And I do feel like, you know, more people are stepping towards that. So currently you might be the nutter in the field, aren't you, and your family? Baker family, but those people, and you know, even just doing like a podcast like this, and even what you're doing, it's just paying it forwards to other people to go, actually, you know what, this could really help, isn't it? And then that pays forwards, and then somebody learns something and they pay it forwards to another parent or another teacher or another person that is affecting change in younger people's lives, and suddenly the whole field is dancing, hopefully.
Absolutely, that's the aim.
Well, it's a good aim. I love it. Right. So we kind of chatted a little bit previously about what we'd want to talk about today. And I know you mentioned sort of talking through the State of the Nation 2022 report, and you sent me a nice summary of things that are going on in there. And I know we've kind of talked about some issues anyway just then. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that, and then let's talk about how we can implement some more change, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the State of the Nation report is a report that the government publish, I believe it's annually, and this year's was published in February, and it's done retrospectively. And when you're reading through that report, there are some glimmers of hope. There are some positive parts within that report, but it's really echoing a lot of what you and I have spoken about, kind of anecdotal evidence. That report allows there to be clear statistics that back up,
which is great to see, terrifying to see when you're here, but great to see at the same time.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying, but I think it's really important to shine a light on it and make sure that people are aware of it. Within education, you are just bombarded with reports and directives and new statutory guidance, more suggested guidance. Now it's statutory, now it's suggested. You are absolutely bombarded with information all of the time, and so sometimes it's difficult to kind of see the wood for the trees. I think really with that State of the Nation report, it allows all of us to take some of that anecdotal evidence that you and I have just been speaking about from our own personal experiences, and actually have some proper statistics behind it that really reinforce a lot of what practitioners are seeing. So a lot of what teaching staff and support staff are seeing in schools, they will anecdotally say there are far more children suffering from mental health issues. They will anecdotally say there are far more children who are self-harming now. What the State of the Nation does is actually quantify that. So in that State of the Nation report, they found that there is a massive increase in the number of children who are suffering from low happiness. When you're a child and you are describing yourself as being unhappy. There's increased rates of anxiety amongst primary school and secondary school children. It really worries me that at primary school, they are still feeling that anxiety. They're feeling that loneliness. The State of the Nation report says that mental health issues have worsened since pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah.
So they saw, you'd kind of expect them to see an increase during the pandemic. But after that, we're still seeing them massively increasing, and it's really building up that pressure. Different kind of organisations will come up with different statistics, all of which feed into the core issue of the State of the Nation report is telling us, which is that there is increased rates of anxiety, increased rates of unhappiness, decrease in well-being in our young people right now. And we have to do something differently about it. And sometimes I feel like I am banging that drum and being that one person in the middle of the field, kind of dancing crazily. The Centre for Mental Health said that in 2001, the average time to get help between showing symptoms and getting help was 10 years. My experience...
God, that's such a long time.
Absolutely. So my experience was in secondary schools. So you see in 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they will have started to show symptoms when they were 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're kind of my older son's age now, 10 years to get any kind of treatment. Of course, those are the only people that have actually, those are only the people that have actually come forward and said it.
Mm-hmm.
And the State of the Nation report this year has said reflectively like what the current situation is, but it's not new. So in 2014, 19% of 16 to 24-year-olds had mental health and depression. 19%. And that was in 2014.
Do you think, just throwing a total curveball here, which I've not warned you about, just so you know, when I was 14, 15, 16 or younger, like I didn't have the kind of language to describe it as well. Do you think, because it's talked about so much more, do you think that's a reason why it's being brought about? Or do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I learned the word anxiety until I was in my 20s. I didn't think nerves were anxiety, or maybe they were. And actually now sometimes I'm like, oh, I was definitely sometimes an anxious kid. If something was stressing me out, I actually wouldn't be able to go to school. But because I couldn't name that, it just was what it was. And my mum was very much like, oh, suck it up, you'll be fine. And smack on the bum, off you go. Not in a nasty way.
Yeah. I know what you mean, like push you out the door.
Yeah, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And actually, once you got into the exam or whatever you were doing, the feelings do generally dissipate. Or do you think that they have the tools to talk about it because it exists so much more? Maybe a bit of both.
I mean, I think in reality it's likely to be a bit of both. I mean, many of these studies that are reporting, that like the data that I told you a moment ago of 19%, are using a number of different questions to elicit whether that child is classified as anxious or not. And whenever you're looking at any of these kind of grouping of people, because it's quite an artificial thing anyway, isn't it? What's the difference between feeling down a bit and having clinical depression? Well, a psychologist will tell you very clearly what the difference is. But in everyday language, kind of sometimes they might get kind of misused and kind of the lines being blurred. I also think that it's absolutely a scale. Like there are levels. So
a bit like any other emotion or any other thing in life, as any other human. I honestly think often we all, to a greater or lesser extent, often experience similar things, but maybe there's a lot more children further higher up the scale, rather than the odd sad day, but actually like painfully sad a lot of the time. In what's supposed to be the happiest time of your life as well. Like, you really aren't supposed to have any worries or stresses, or like you've not got bills or anything. Like, it's so sad that that's the case, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that we need to be really aware of it and aware of that kind of tension between, if you talk about it too much, do you kind of create a problem? And I think, again, that's where it's really useful that the government are producing these kind of reports with tangible data. And when you actually read through that report, some of the statistics that I've mentioned or some of the comments that I've mentioned, so for example, in older children are experiencing far worse well-being than younger children, so it's kind of getting worse as you get older. And those children with special educational needs is even lower still. Within the State of the Nation report, you're able to actually drill down to exactly what that data has been based on. So you're able to actually kind of, it's really easy, like you click a link and then you click a link to the actual study that shows.
That's so interesting.
You can actually drill down and say, well, where did they get that data? How reliable is that data? And because it's a government report as opposed to a report published, sort of like if I just sort of survey 20 people in my family.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how sad are you?
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to me just kind of like, as a complete layman, making it up. Because it is a government,
they've covered lots of different
fact. Exactly, that data and that evidence needs to be reliable. And the government haven't, the State of Nation report, of course, but there are lots of other papers that they've released. So in 2018, they released a green paper that really spoke about the mental health, the impact of mental health on young people. And that led to quite a few changes in schools. So schools were expected to have mental health leads, for example, because that green paper recognised that if a child has got poor mental health, and that's going to affect their long-term success. The problem, as I said right at the start of this conversation, staff members are under so much stress and pressure
already before they've even then suddenly it's like, actually you also need to have this, and you need to be able to tick some more boxes and do some more admin and you know, be aware of something else.
And in addition to trying to teach them, I don't know, numeracy, trying to teach them the alphabet, that's simplistic, trying to teach them phonics, trying to teach them these kind of content, what we traditionally talk about within education. We're also we as society are also expecting schools to be delivering a lot of this mental health support, because if there is such a huge backlog, it's got to fall to the professionals that are seeing them every day, doesn't it? Because they're not able.
It falls somewhere, doesn't it? And if that's where they're going 6 hours a day, I guess I can imagine as a parent it is like, well, of course that's where they're going to learn it. That's where they go to learn everything else, and that does make sense. Like, it shouldn't just be maths, English and science. Like, I mean, I'm a believer that school should be setting you up for life anyway, and there should be lots of other things that we maybe learn in school that we don't, and some things that maybe aren't as necessary. It's all well and good saying that, but if they don't have the capacity, like you said, I mean, how much more can one teacher or even one school take on without more budgets, without more time in
Absolutely. Because if they had the budget, they would be able to potentially employ another person to deliver that, or they'd be able to change the contact time between teacher and student. So there are lots of other things that they can do. I do really feel like we're increasingly getting to that point where more people are joining that lone dancer in the field. And there is more attention being drawn on it. And that's because people are able to triangulate the different pieces of data. So you've got your State of the Nation report, you've got evidence from the Centre for Mental Health. The NHS stated in 2020 that 1 in 6 primary school children have got a mental health condition. 1 in 6 primary school children. And that's in 2020. I know that obviously there's been a pandemic since then. But again, if you triangulate all of those different pieces of data, they're all leading to the same conclusion. You know, something has to change. We have to start doing something differently. I mentioned to you the other day that this kind of way of thinking is coming into our society. So I was watching Bluey. If you haven't watched Bluey, Hannah, are you a Bluey fan?
I don't know what Bluey is. When you texted me that earlier, I was like,
you are missing out.
I don't know what Bluey is. Right. I'm going to look it up. Is it a kids program?
Yeah, it is a kids program.
Our kids are 14 and 16, so I feel like we've finished with. But I'm deaf. I've got nieces and nephews. I can watch some Bluey.
Yeah, so Bluey is, you know, essentially for children, but it's very much for adults.
Right.
And there's a lovely episode about the mum race, and speaking about the mum characters all competing, who crawls first and who stands first, and it ends up, you know, with another character saying you're doing a really good job to the mum. And that's clearly, that's for parents, right? That episode has not been written for children in mind.
Love that.
It has been written for parents in mind.
I actually love anything that's got, if it's kids entertainment, but it has an adult element to it, I'm gripped. Like any film, any kids, even if it's like U or PG, but it has something that you almost know is over the kid's head, and it's just blatantly just written for the adult. That's my kind of show. So
absolutely. So it's very popular for that reason. But there's one episode called Bad Mood, and in that they speak about the the character's sister, Bingo, is in a bad mood. And when they're in a bad mood, their dad kind of walks around with them being the bad mood.
Right.
And Bluey talks about different ways to get out of that bad mood. And so actually in this like little 10-minute kids program that we're watching before school, they're speaking about trying to do belly breathing. So she teaches them, gets them to do belly breathing, gets them to do some colouring in, gets them to do some dancing, all different ways to shake this bad mood. The point that I'm making is that really from 3, 4, 5-year-olds, which is kind of the typical age that watch Bluey, children are starting to be exposed to these ideas, and so should hopefully then come into educational settings expecting some of that dialogue, expecting there to be some of that conversation about being in a bad mood and what options you could have off the back of it. But as we said, as a common theme throughout that, that's within this tension where, staff are being told so much more to do. And so I think really for me with Children Inspired by Yoga, that's where I think we can start to actually do something, something very tangible that is repeated.
Yeah, and that's created by experts and has, proven methodology. Before we come into solutions, I would love to hear your opinion as a mum, as an educational professional, as a coach, and now working with Children Inspired by Yoga, why you think mental health has deteriorated so much within young people.
Yeah, I mean, they are absolutely under more pressure now than ever before. When I was at school, I remember, if I didn't do very well, that was my fault, essentially. And if I wasn't particularly academic, there were all sorts of different routes I could go down after I left school.
Yeah.
And for some of my peers, it was the same. There were lots and lots of jobs available in all sorts of different fields, looking for all sorts of different qualifications and experience. Increasingly, a lot of those jobs have been replaced by artificial intelligence or replaced by kind of automated systems. And so there aren't as many options, and therefore there's even more pressure to succeed when you're at school. And at the same time, you've got the government have increased the amount of pressure and focus on teaching staff and on school, so that's ramping up the pressure. And then you've got this absolutely kind of mind-bogglingly ridiculous situation where the statistics of 1 in 5 3 to 4-year-olds have got their own mobile phone. That was Ofcom 2023 statistics.
What do they need it for?
So you've got this like ridiculous situation where children have got access to information on their mobile phone all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some benefits to using mobile phones, of course there are some pluses. I know as an adult, I don't know what I would do without it, because it's the means of communication, it's how I pay for things,
mm-hmm.
it's how I organise my life, it's how I communicate with people. There are so many useful aspects of it.
Most people are probably listening or watching this on a mobile phone right now. There's lots of benefits, but a bit like smoking, I really don't think we understand the downsides to it yet. And even though there is statistics and you see more and more people talking about it and professionals talking about it, I think it's fascinating as well. Like a lot of people that make mobile phones don't let their children have mobile phones.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a really interesting podcast from Dr. Chatty.
Right.
And he interviews, a lot of his podcasts are about wellness,
mm-hmm.
And he speaks to lots of different scientists and technology, kind of people within the technology industry. And I was listening to one of his podcasts and he speaks about attention and how our attention span as a population is decreasing. And so we're
flicking through 10, 15-second videos. And if it's not interesting, we're done. And then also we can't pay attention. And then you want kids to sit down for an hour and a half and do an exam, but they can't sit for 10 minutes doing something. It's surely not contributing to what we need them. Well, if you want that to continue to be the way we educate. And also even in work, I'm someone that's actively conscious about how much content I consume, and I still notice how challenging I find it to get into concentration. Once I'm genuinely in it, I'm there, but it could take me up to 45 minutes sometimes to get really focused. And that has got to be where my brain is just used to switching from. And also if I have to do something, I don't know about you, but if I have to do something where I have to do something on my phone. So say I was messaging you earlier and I pick it up, suddenly I'm down a rabbit hole doing something completely different. I mean, even just talking like that, it's so clear that they're not positively creating that kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he spoke to one of the developers at Google, and he was the guy who first said about having a ping when you get a new email in, because they wanted to increase the number of people that looked at Gmail. And he, was speaking. He said he was out, whatever, in the woods, and he started hearing ping, ping, or vibration everywhere. And he really thought, oh my God, that was sort of one idea that he had in that meeting that got implemented, that then is impacting millions of people's lives. And as an individual, you might try to not consume that content. There are teams and teams and teams of really advanced analysis happening behind the scenes, and really, really very clever people trying to get you to consume more of that content.
And AI as well. Like, it's like, how can we get you to watch an advert? Like, how can we get you to scroll and not scroll fast, but fast enough that you're changing from time to time, so you're seeing adverts in between, but not so fast. And I'm the same. Like, I don't have notifications on my phone. I actively choose not to have them. I don't get the little bubble. I don't get it come up. It really bothers me. But then sometimes I will go in and out of an app loads of times because I want to see if I've had a message, and I'm like, this also isn't, like, that's not the solution either. I think it's a better solution for me, but sometimes I'm like, this is not healthy either.
No, absolutely. And I think for our young people, that kind of suitable mobile phone use needs to be modelled by their parents and by the adults that they see. And so if they are seeing,
they're addicted, right? And adults are addicted and they don't even know. And it's not really talked about in modern society. And I don't think a lot of parents would not have any idea that that's addictive. Like, in my opinion, even down to, I saw like a young girl, she must have been 10, in our town the other day. She had a handbag on, she had her phone in her hand, and I think she had a little drink. She's walking along and she was just walking on her own, and she's obviously thinking she's being an adult, right? Or she's like, looks so cool. And here she is, not even looking where she's going, FaceTiming or texting. And that's the example we're setting all the time. Like, I actively, again, try to put my phone away. If I'm with my family, we have like no phone rules and stuff. And I still feel often controlled by it. So I can't even imagine if someone's not aware, or if you are trying to escape reality of it. It's such an easy way and quick way to be mindless, isn't it? And if life is really stressful, pick up the phone, you get that instant feeling of endorphins and calm for a second, put it back down, pick it back up, put it back down, pick it back up. Like, something stressful, pick up the phone, something stressful, pick up the phone, a bit like that old cigarette or the drink a glass of wine or whatever it is. But instead of once a day or once an hour, that's like 4 hours a day, people, and that's minimal, probably consuming 6-8 hours a day. And that's been, you're right. Like, then children are copying that.
And it's like, what are you consuming? What is it that you're taking in? And the Dove advert that was recently released, I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yes,
Dove advert linking social media with eating disorders. I think that really clearly shows the role that social media and mobile phones have used. Because in our dialogue now, we've talked about mobile phone use, but actually we've talked about consuming content.
Yeah.
And that comes from social media.
Yeah.
And so I think that Dove advert kind of demonstrates exactly how it's linked with children's mental health, because they are linked together. And if you are then addicted, as you've mentioned, you're less likely to go outside because you're addicted to looking at your phone and the glare's bad outside, right? So it's so many different things. I think, you'd asked me about whether rates of anxiety genuinely have increased, or whether it's just that we're better at identifying them, was essentially kind of the question that you'd asked. And when we're thinking about all of these different factors, there are so many more factors influencing young people's and adults' mental health, actually, for that matter. Now that they simply were not there 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And kind of at the start of this piece of dialogue, saying that I felt this is a crazy situation, because it is unimaginable. I say even 10 years ago, we would be in a situation.
Well, Facebook's only been about 14. I joined Facebook in 2007, I think, or like 2006, and I feel like I was like an early adopter. Which I'm not sure like even that's a thing to be proud of, but
I genuinely am so grateful it was not around when I was at college and university, because and it's not surprising people care about what they look like when it's going to be videoed and lasted forevermore.
And listen, we've just talked about, I mean, I talked for ages then just about literally the addiction of picking it up and seeing what's happening and has that person responded. That's not even talking about bullying. Easy accessible bullying on apps where something can be sent and it's only there for 12 seconds or whatever it is. Like, comparison. I actively on my social media, I quite like social media. I can see it as a really great tool, and I feel like, I think you and I are a similar generation, and we've just sort of, it was around from early adulthood really, but I actively try to be as truly me as possible. I don't filter, I don't do things like that. But even down to, I find if I'm, you know, comparing my worst day to other people's best days, because, you know, it's the best angle, it's the best day, isn't it? It's whatever. And all of those things, like the comparison, like you said, all the things in that Dove advert. If you've not watched that, go and have a watch of that, because that's just one example. And that's obviously an extreme example, but comparison is the thief of joy, ultimately. I think that's the best sum up of social media that there is. And also, everything I read or I see, parent like restrictions don't actually work, because there's ways around it. You can reset your phone. Like if a kid resets their phone, then it switches it off, or there's ways around it. Or, you know, yes, you might not see explicit content, but that's not even always that's worrying, but like that's not the only worrying thing. There's plenty of stuff that would be deemed appropriate to a child that is still really damaging, isn't it? So it's really hard they have not worked out how to kind of police the industry. I just don't think it's governed in any way. It's just so hard to do that, because it's normal people putting out content. Anybody can put out whatever they want, and yes, once in a while it's taken down, but that's taken down by AI as well, so it's not always taken down, and then children are consuming it even if it's taken down later. And it's kind of baffling what's even allowed on there, to be honest.
I mean, even if we ignore the extreme content that you've referred to, the fact that you're saying there, I love that comparison, the thief, you know, is the thief of joy. As adults, we find it hard to compare, you know, to consider whether there's been a filter used on that particular photo, or whether the lighting was particularly good on that day, or whether that person, I don't know, has actually bothered doing their makeup that day.
I mean,
or having a cleansing routine.
Even down to, exactly, like right now, you know, I said to you at the beginning, I was like, come as your best self, sit in front of a light. So here we are, sat in front of I'm sat in front of a window. I've got I'd like to think like I've got the camera at the right level, but equally, if I'm suddenly filming from down here, or someone takes a picture of an angle of me that I don't, it's also smoke and mirrors as well, isn't it? It's people's best angles compared to your worst, and then you're like, oh my god, why don't I look like that? And it's just not realistic. Nobody really looks like that. This is not how me and Helen don't look like this, really.
When you're looking at that when you're 7 years old, how can we expect 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds? How can we expect them to know the difference?
You can't understand, and they can't understand that that's not real. Okay, so we've talked about State of the Nation report. We've talked about anxiety and mental health in children. We've talked about kind of some contributors, mostly focusing on mobile phones, and that's not even touching on the pandemic or isolation or so many other things. What are you doing currently? Because you said, you know, you've come out of one career and you stepped into a new path because you wanted to do something that is helping and making a difference. So tell me what you're doing now. And also, I'd love us to get some like 3 or 4 easy tips for any parents listening of things maybe they could do. It doesn't have to be 3 or 4, it could be 1. Like a simple thing we can do each day. I mean, you already gave one, which is the repeat after me's, which I loved.
Yeah, so for Children Inspired by Yoga, it's really about trying to make sure that children are given a regular opportunity to practice some of these things, because I think very often we'll do them for like a one-off, or like schools will do an enrichment day on well-being or on healthy eating or on movement. And for me, it's about doing it regularly. So regularly, every week, having a similar kind of routine and practices that allow some movement and some kind of, it's like an introduction into what could be and what further things you can investigate into, and an introduction into checking in with yourself, an introduction into some breathing techniques. All of those different things can be so powerful. So at the moment, it's really about making it as accessible as possible. So making sure people know what the program's about and kind of how they can implement it into their setting. So with yoga, that's what I'm doing. I'm working with some leaders within schools doing coaching. So trying to really allow them space to explore their thinking and to make sure that their decision making is in line with what they're really looking for, what their outcome for that particular project or aspect of their life is working for. I'm also really fortunate to work with some heads of science and talking to them about kind of what they're doing and how they want to move their team forward. So I'm really feel very, very grateful that I'm able to be in a position where I can do very different work. Like each day is very, very different, but all of them have kind of got that running theme of really trying to encourage individuals to feel comfortable enough to be the best that they can be. So whether that's with children and doing children inspired by yoga and really getting them to think about how they can be the best they can be and checking in with your emotions and how you feel and actually thinking, why am I in that state of mind? What options have I got? What techniques can I do? Helps them to be the best that they can possibly be, whichever path that is that they take. And when I'm working with professionals within education, again, it's about making sure that they are really clear on what they want, because very often all of us kind of go through these tunnels and there's so much on people's plates. They go full steam at something, and sometimes I just need somebody impartial to just ask, well, why are you doing it like that? So as I say, I'm really grateful and very fortunate that I'm in a position where I'm able to apply some of those aspects and skills that I've acquired over sort of 18, 19 years working within that kind of sector to try and do something a bit different. As a parent at home, if you're starting to be a bit concerned about your child's mental health, and I think that it's something that a lot of parents probably have somewhere in their mind, because when children are young, especially, it might not present itself in the extreme ways that we're perhaps used to seeing in the media by the time they're 15, 16 and so on, right? I really think it is about taking time to sit and to listen to your child and make sure their voice is heard and valued. And that's not an easy thing to do when they're really, really annoying, like purposefully winding you up. I think for parents, if you're in a situation where you're struggling to kind of listen to the child or understand why they're acting naughty all the time, a really good book called The Chimp Paradox. I'm sure you've read it, Hannah.
I have. I do love that book.
It's a really good one, and they have a child's edition as well.
Yeah.
So it's a good one that you can read through with your child. And I think that really helps them to
identify different parts of their brain and their emotions, and that's not necessarily them. I found it so powerful. I highly, highly recommend that book. Even in a relationship, in the book, they tell you to name your chimps, and mine's Aggie. She's very prominent, and Martin's is Teddy. And sometimes I'm like, listen, Aggie is really in control right now, so I feel like you need to back off. And he'll do the same. And it's very clever, and especially for the kids. I haven't actually read the kids edition, but I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, I feel like because I am in my son's room, I'm just scanning through his piles of books. He's got books everywhere. Whether I can show you the cover of it. Should have thought and actually made sure I had it present. Oh, it is. It's in reachable. It's reachable.
Amazing.
There we go. Proof that it is actually red.
My hidden chimp. I love that.
Is that it? You can see the light properly there. That's
I can see it. Yeah.
It's kind of cartooned through.
Yeah.
But I think that that's a really good way, like we say, of being able to identify those feelings that they're experiencing so that they can work through them. Because I don't think that it needs to be classed as a mental health concern when they're that young. I think it kind of becomes an issue if it's not addressed, and it accumulates and it gets worse and worse and worse, So as I say, affirmations, as we mentioned earlier, I absolutely suggest listening, actually trying to objectify that. And I know that that's very hard, and I am absolutely guilty of shouting back at my children on occasion.
We're all human, aren't we? Actually, the Chimp Paradox as well, I just highly recommend adults reading it. I think that it helps you be more forgiving of anybody that does that to you, but particularly children, because children are in their chimp a lot. And also forgiving to yourself when you shout back and it is just the chimp throwing poo back.
yeah. I'd be like, I can't, no, this is too much. I need to say something back. And then my last one, because I'm going to go for 3, my favourite breath within yoga for children's yoga is the bee breath. So just encouraging them to breathe in and breathing out, going. And one of the reasons I think I particularly like this is because I've had parents tell me they've used it with their children. They've done it in class, and then they've used it with their kids at home when their kids are really struggling, or their chimp is really in charge, to use the chimp paradox language. And so I think because I've had that positive feedback from parents as well, I think that's why I also kind of think that that's a really positive breath to try out.
Yeah, it is. So just to kind of break that down, so basically you take the breath in and then you just make a bee noise, so bzzz, coming out. And if you or your child is feeling particularly confident and comfortable, they can also close their eyes and pop their hands just over their ears lightly, which increases the vibration throughout the whole body. And it just promotes calm almost instantly. If you do 3, I'd say no more than 3. It's such a clever one. And then once you've taught it as well, you will even find at points your child will go, I'm going to do bee breath, and they sit down and they just do it. And it's so clever and it's so simple, and it's lovely for adults as well, isn't it? It's just a really nice, easy one that can be done anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't require it doesn't even require counting. No, you can just do it.
Perfect. Just do it. It's my kind of breathing. Well, Helen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I know that's going to have been so helpful to so many people. So yeah, thank you for your time and your expertise, and so grateful. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat.